So after the entire Zhongli incident last time, I want to know how good we can predict characters to see if they're worth rolling for or worth investing at all. And honestly, it's not looking too good for Albedo. I mean, just take a look at how hard Miho is trying to hard sell him. Look at all this amazing 4-star on the Albedo banner, as well as looking at the Geo buff that they're giving him on the Abyss 4 Trove. I mean, is he really that hard to sell, Mihoyo? Anyway, let's take a look at his kit using my favorite aspect of the game: math, analytic, and researches. Starting off, let's look at his base stat. On the left side here is going to be Albedo's base stat, and on the right side is going to be our favorite GeoMC base stat. Taking a look at his attack battle, you can see that Albedo have approximately 15 to 20% higher attack, depending on the level, which is to be expected, to be honest, because Albedo is a 5-star that you have to roll for, and the GeoMC is a character that's given to everyone for free. Now, however, this number, when we compare to something like Kaixing, you can see that Albedo's attack percent is about 30% lower than Kaixing. However, he does have 10% higher defense than Kaixing, or even 20% compared to the GeoMC, which we'll talk about later because you have a defensive scaling on it, similar to Noel. And moving on for his normal attack as well. On the left side, again, we have the Albedo normal attack ratio, and on the right side, we have Kaixing. And as you can see, Albedo's attack ratio for his normal attack is approximately like 5 to 10% lower than Kaixing. And this is dramatically lower when we look at the charge attack, which is how Kaixing's playstyle is meant to be. It's meant for hitting high ratio charge attack. Similar to Zhongli, who also have low ratio, Miho probably intended for him to be like a sub-DPS caster, whose main primary job is to cast their ability and then switch to another character for your normal attacking. Not to mention they even prepared a casting sword for him, which have energy recharge as a substat, and similar to the stringless, increase your elemental skill and your elemental burst damage. And overall, this just means that we won't be playing him main TPS, instead he'll just be like a more supporting character. In fact, Mihoyo even categorized him as a support themselves. And then moving on, we have Albedo Elemental Skill. On the top here, we have Albedo Elemental Skill, and for the bottom, we're gonna have the Skyfell Sword from the GeoMC ability, who are actually very, very similar. They both create like a geo structure and the boom damage. They both have 8 seconds skill coincidentally, so they're very, very similar. But taking a look at the ratio, you can see that Albedo ratio is approximately half the skill damage of GeoMC. However, it does have an additional property, which is the pausing effect, which scaling of his defense. An easy way to think about this is to think of it similar to the Fischl's Bird Oz, where when you summon it, there's an initial burst damage, and then every like 1.5 second Oz will shoot out a bolt. But instead of shooting out Oz, you'll be summoning an elevator, which shall pause every 2 seconds. Now, assuming that you are casting his skill at exactly 8-second interval, and assuming that you're casting GeoMC's boulder exactly at 8-second interval, then you can calculate their effective DPS. For talent level 6 Albedo, that's going to be 50% of your defense plus 23% of your attack. And for GeoMC, it's going to be about 46% of your attack, similarly at talent level 6. Now we know that GeoMC boulder does amazing damage, so we can kind of think about Albedo E does really great damage as well because it has a much bigger ratio when you factor in the defense percent. If only it didn't have the flaw that it's scaled with defense percent. When people look at this, they're like, oh, Albedo scaled with defense percent, so I must build defense percent. Similar to the character Noel, who you would definitely build defense percent on. Now there's a big problem with this philosophy, and that is in comparison to Noel, Albedo is not going to be on the field at all, as we mentioned, because of his low ratio of his normal attack talent. So if he's not on the field, then he's not going to get hit by monsters. And if he's not going to hit by monsters, then why do you need to build defense percent on him? What exactly are you defending against? It makes sense for a character like Noel to build defense percent because she's going to be on the field swinging her great sword at those enemy. Not to mention that for Noel, there's going to be defense scaling on her elemental burst as well, so building defense percent on Noel makes sense, while for Albedo, it's going to be slightly harder to justify. Albedo elemental burst doesn't scale with defense percent at all, so it just really doesn't make sense to me like why you want to build defense percent on him. Unless that is, of course, you have Constellation 2, which we're going to cover in a bit. And then next up, we're gonna have Albedo Elemental Burst, which is gonna be the biggest selling point of this characters. Albedo Elemental Burst, similar to Zhongli, have a 40 energy cost and a really high ratio. The initial Elemental Burst damage have 100 lower percent than Zhongli's. However, it does have a follow-up effect, which is gonna be the Blossom. Now you only have to hit 2 Blossom in order to beat the damage on Zhongli or like GeoMC. However, like how hard it is to hit these Blossom is gonna be really hard to say. If you take a look at this picture, which I grabbed from a Chinese community discussion, you can see that there are 4 of this Blossom on the field. However, only about 2 to 3 of which are actually directly in front of him, and it's hard to even say if those are gonna be hitting the target. Not to mention that there are 3 more of this Blossom that are nowhere to be seen. So it seems like that the spread is going to be really huge just for it to be consistent. This part specifically, we're going to have to do more testing to actually find out how many Blossom we can reliably hit every single time and how much damage it will provide. Before we move on, I want to drive your attention to this very important detail, and that is his elemental bursts have no defensive percent scaling. Considering how high the ratio on his elemental burst is, it just makes absolutely no sense to me why you want to build attack percent on him. And therefore, it just makes the entire defensive percent scaling gimmick useless, is what I think at least. Finally, let's take a look at his passive talent. Starting off with the Flash of Geniuses, when he crafts a weapon ascension, he has 10% to receive the double product, which is pretty good. You know, that means that in case you randomly pull him and you don't want him, you can just leave him at level 1 as a crafting slave. Thank you, MiHoYo. For the next talent, these Blossom are referring to the pulse AoE generated by his elemental skill, his E, and they'll do 25% more damage to opponent who below 50%. On paper, this might look amazing, however, remember the fatal flaw we talked about with its elemental skill, especially during the pulses, how it scales with defense percent, but probably during defense percent, it's just bad. So this is talent, honestly, it's not going to be that noticeable of a damage increase, is what I think. For his final talent, using his elemental burst increased the elemental mastery of your party by 125. This again looks so out of place to me. When Albedo is a Geo character, then why are you building elemental mastery or even giving elemental mastery on him? Since elemental mastery pretty much does nothing except to increase his crystallized amount on him. Giving elemental mastery to your party member might look amazing, but keep in mind that since Albedo is a Geo character, then your other character wouldn't be able to react off his reaction anyway. It's not like sucrose already exists if you really want to give elemental mastery to your party. It felt like for me they just forced this interaction in to continuously develop the relationship of how he's sucrose master, so they both are giving elemental mastery to other characters. And finally, we can take a look at his constellation. Now, before we start, I actually want to make a really important call, and that is I don't consider constellation as a part of their kit. I feel like especially for a 5-star character, having a C0 5-star character should be the necessary condition for them to be complete or playable. So I think that having Constellation 1 or higher are gonna be like a rare category and doesn't applicable to majority of the player, maybe like 90 to 80%. I felt like if the definition of having an amazing character is having a Constellation 6 version of him, then I felt like that character wasn't amazing to begin with. The Constellation that I want to take a look is his Constellation 2 because I felt like that has the biggest impact. It pretty much gives him the defense percent scaling that he was missing on his other ability to begin with. If you take a look at this, it pretty much when you cast your E ability, it gives you like stack whenever it pauses. Up to 4 stack, and each stack increase your damage by 30% scaling of Albedo defense. So a total of 4 stack means increase by 120% to Albedo defense, which is a significant amount. And finally, when you cast your elemental burst, you will increase your elemental burst damage by consuming all of this stack. This is pretty much just saying like, oh, here is the defense percent scaling that you were missing on your elemental burst to begin with. Because of this, for the majority of players, it's building attack percent just so much better because they don't have the defensive scaling on his kit or in his elemental burst, which again tie back to, I don't know, like 6 or 7 minutes ago where I said like his E is just completely missing. This defensive percent on his E is just useless because you wouldn't be building defense on him at all. The only benefit is that increase like the damage by a bit from his base defense. As a final remark, Albedo is meant to be a Geo-type character whose goal is to supplement the main team damage by providing his elemental skill and his elemental burst. However, like if you're meant to do damage, then why are you a Geo character? It's not like at least Zhongli have a shield, right? And not to mention that his gimmick is just so out of place, like his defense percent scaling or his elemental mastery on his talent, both of which again we have described are just so out of place and not really appealing to me. I know MiHoYo are very kind to us to provide a sword that increases elemental skill and elemental burst damage. But like, why don't you just throw that sword to your Geo MC instead, who come with Constellation 6? If you really want to have a Geo burst type character on your party, like, huh? Before we end the video, there's a couple stuff I want to talk about. I probably won't be rolling for Albedo. He's just really unattractive to me. Although I probably roll for the 4-star, so if I happen to get Albedo, then I might make video on him, or I might keep him at level 1. And finally, there is some important aspect of this video. Between the day of making this video and he actually releasing on this server, his ratio might have changes, and we should completely change it, like how our initial impression of him is. I might be wrong, I may be incorrect about those stuff, so don't completely take my word on it. Although I do think a really important aspect is that in the future we can come and look back at this and see how much we got right and how much we got wrong, to see how well we did on the prediction, which is going to be a really interesting learning experience for me and for everyone else who's watching there, who are interested in knowing, oh, if this character is worth knowing at all. And so that's it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.